Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be using the Stratford watercolour pad. It's a fine grain and £140. This is 100% cotton. It's got a very, very fine surface. We will be using some Talon's Designer gouache as well. An array of brushes. And my usual homemade paints. These are all watercolour. So I'm going to start with my usual wet into wet. So I'm taking my big goat hair brush and I'm going to wet the paper. So I'm wetting all of it. I'm going to take some ultramarine blue. Now this is a lighter version of blue of the ultramarine. And I'm just going to put this in approximate areas. Pyroline green. So I'm going to take that all the way through there. And I quite like purple, so we will take some purple through sections of this as well. So I'm going to use a yellow to come in through here. And again, if it mixes, I'm not worried about that. But I'm going to put some more blue here. Sorry, you can all hear my dog whining to get in. Okay, so I'm going to continue adding different blues and violets. So have a bit more violet through there. And they're not particularly deep yet. I'll just remove just a little bit so it's a lot softer around where the glass is, although I want some of it to be there because it is glass. And I might just pop another little bit of, this is like an Indian yellow. Slight grey there. And of course I'm going to let that dry off and I will be back to put the second layer on. You're my little faithful friend, aren't you? Yes. You're a good boy, aren't you? What are you saying? What are you saying, pretty boy? You're my clever boy. Yes. My faithful companion. It's a good boy. What do you want? You're my sheepdog, aren't you? Come on. Okay, so now that it's dry, I'm going to start with the flame because it's the lightest part we have. So I'll start with this slightly mucky orange. Brush that off. Then I'm going to go with lighter yellow. And again, I'm just going to touch into the sides of this. Doesn't look like much at the minute. And then with the damp brush, move that to there and move in. I'm then going to use the damp brush to pull this up. Wash that off again. Take off the excess. And then I'm going to drag back down, taking some of the background colour with it, just back into the yellow. Now, it may be that this dries way too light and I have to go back and do it again. So I'm just going to keep dragging and keep dragging. I'm going to wash that brush off again, take off the excess, and again just drag that upwards. So hopefully when I get a darker background in, I will have a lighter space there. Now I can always lift some more out later on, but I think for now I just want to get a deeper yellow dotted in about here. And then move that backwards. Okay, and because we've got some of the candle missing, I'm going to put a little layer of yellow in there regardless of what the colour of the candle is. And again, just a little bit of that deeper yellow. Again, I'm not really concerned whether it's truly accurate at the minute. Just getting some ideas of what would happen when you have coloured light touching something else. Okay, so I've dried that off with a hairdryer just for speed, and I'm going to go back to my ultramarine light, and I'm going to put a little drop of blue in here, right at the base of this flame. And I'll just, with a damp brush, pull that around a little. Not sure I want it actually up that high, but I'm going to diffuse that down just a little bit. And what I can do is just drop a tiny bit more blue right at that bottom edge. And just let it fade. I can tighten all that up later. I don't know if you can see, but this flame is actually quite yellow, but the camera is picking it up as white. But it's in real life very yellow, the flame. So I'm going to go with a slightly more yellow flame. Okay, so I've made some grey up, and this literally is using the opposites, blue and orange. So this is going to be a very dark, well, it's a black bottle to be fair. And this will represent the light catching the dark area. Okay, so before I start filling in the bottle, what I really want to do is to actually just put a few ideas about where I've put things so that I don't inadvertently go and cover them over. So if I just fill in this stalk, for instance, then at least its space will still be there, and I won't mistakenly go over where it should be. Not actually sure where this stalk actually is. Okay, so again, I'm just going to use this grey, very dilute, and start putting in some of the shadows that are on the glass. So again, I'm only going to paint exactly what I see. I'm not going to deviate from shapes. I'm just going to stick exactly as closely as possible to the shapes that I see. So although the glass is quite complex, if you stick to the shapes that you see in the tone that you see, you generally don't have to think about what you're painting. You just need to replicate those shapes in the tone that is needed. I think I might have just come down too far with that one. So remember, I'm simplifying every shape. I'm not trying to create something that isn't actually there. I'm following them exactly as I see them and not doing any more. So I leave the brush strokes as simple as possible. So some of these straighter lines I can't actually put on unless I'm quiet, because my hand wobbles. So I'm just adding something. It's just a fraction deeper in tone, this paint, this grey. It's made from the same blue-orange mix. And I will progressively get that darker. But ideally, all I'm doing is really mapping out where all the marks actually are. So while the glass is drying, I've come back with just much deeper colour here. Now this is hematite black mixed with violet. So I can start building in some darks. Highlight there, which I can't go past. And again, I'm not using any pressure on my brush here. I've got a really good point on this brush. As you can see, my brushes are made by Rosemary, so they always hold their point. And again, I'm only painting what I see. I'm not deviating much from that. So the original candle I have in this bottle is actually gold. So somehow I've got to find a base that would do. I'm not sure this is it. The shadows. Yeah, I'm not sure that actually works. So I'm going to lift that back till it's dry. And I will go in, I think, with something like a Payne's grey. Which I will dilute out. So I put a few strokes on. Wash the brush off and then pull it so that I get my shadow. And if it goes too far, I will literally go back the other way with a damp brush. So this is just a wet brush. So I've got the shadow in. And with glazes, you really do need to let the first layers dry completely in order to be able to get them in. So while I'm waiting, I'm going to put the wick in. And on to the end of that is a little bit of a burning ember. I'm not sure which colour I need to be able to. That's probably a bit too. It needs a bit more yellow, I think. So I'm going to put a dot of an orange there that should hopefully run into the black. As you can see, it's going there. But I'm going to leave that to dry and not touch that. So again, all of that will have to dry before I can continue. Now, this has dried a lot lighter than I actually wanted it. So again, I'm going to go back in. So I've actually used neutral tint here. I'm not entirely convinced it's the right colour for this top. I mean, it's not bad. I think I might try the Payne's grey. Let's see what that gives me. I think the highlights are just a bit too chunky. We could do with being a little narrower. Okay, so the label is a bit creamy coloured. So I'm going to use a bit of yellow ochre and a tiny bit of violet, just to put the dirty part of it in where it's aged. And again, damp brush, and just soften that so it looks a little bit aged. Okay, so a deeper darker mix. So this is the Payne's Grey and blue. I do quite like anything from Prussian to Windsor to any one of those really super strong blues for this kind of job. And I can really sort of sink in some really juicy reflections. Well, they're not the darks in the glass. This is actually a hard edge, this one, but I'm just going to soften that out just a bit until I'm ready to complete that one. Okay, I quite like how dark that's going, so again I'm going to drop a little bit into this edge. And it has actually run just a little bit where it was wet, but I'm not worried, not yet. And again, I'm going to soften that round because that's where there is a distinct highlight just there. So I'll keep all my edges soft until I need them to be super hard. Colouring to this glass. So again, I'm just picking up some of that juicier colour, if you like, the pinker. And again, a little bit of alizarin here would actually help. Anything slightly pink. So that's what I'm going to do there. I can see that the glass is actually pulling out a little bit of pink just about there. Pearly and violet. And again, this probably isn't as dark as I need to go. I probably still need to do a bit more. So it may be that I need to actually put this on full strength. Okay, so I think we've got quite a few darks there. Perhaps not enough in the... I think I actually need to dilute that down just a bit for this top section. It's still a bit too wet, I think. Okay, I'm going to leave a gap because it is too wet to put them next to each other. but I can go on to my candle. Now, as I said, my candle was a gold colour, so I'm just going to use some yellow ochre, or maybe even raw sienna would do. Raw sienna might be better. Yeah, raw sienna. Although the gold candles tend not to be very yellow. I'm just going to work in here. So again, I'm just picking out dark-ish areas and leaving what lights I can see. My candle's almost burnt down while I've been working. Again, this is something I can't do too much to while each layer is wet. Okay, I'm going to darken some of the glass so that I can get a better shape for it, and because it's probably the only bit that's actually dry. So again, I'm just trying to concentrate on actually finding some of those shadows that I can use to help me create something that looks like glass. Not as easy as you think when you've got something see-through and you can't actually see a lot because of the background. And the actual back of the glass is quite light at the edge, so that means I've got to darken inside to be able to get the edge. Okay, some of these might actually need to be darker still. I think this one has to be extremely dark, so I'm going to take that down into the colour as well and darken the coloured part of it. This one's not quite as dark. And again, I need to put another layer of really juicy paint on, because a lot of it actually went into wet and I've lost part of the pink that I wanted to keep. So I'm just going to redo basically what I'd started. So I want to get some pink elements back. So I may have to put some dark violet into my mix. So again, I've got some richer colours coming up that will help me. There we go again. Can't talk with when I'm doing So I'm going to cut that straight across there, and I'll put some more pinks in, I think. So I'll let that dry for a minute, and in the meantime I can come back to my bottle. So I want to get some, what do I want? Do I want neutral tint? So I've got neutral tint here, but I've actually got Windsor blue in it. So I'm going to start picking out again. Some of these dark patterns. So it's almost like drawing with colour. Okay, so I'm just going to and reassess how dark I need to go. Okay, so just try to get some more darks in. Again, I'm going back to violet here because it's just a colour I love. I think it actually works quite well within the glass. And the other colour I'm going to use is Pyroline green into about there, so that some of the colour from the leaves will be reflected into the glass. And again, it's just about giving some extra interest. And if that doesn't work, then I can always go over it with something darker still. Okay, so I'm leaving little gaps, not for highlights, some for darks. So dark shadow underneath. This one I already started, and I think it might still have to be darker still, but we'll wait and see. It may work. It may. So I'm going to go to a slightly more orangey cadmium red as I come up. I'm hoping this will not to be wet and therefore not running everywhere. I might leave that one. I have a feeling that one will run. So again, I'm just concentrating on getting a nice deep colour. Oops, I have to make that one a bit bigger. Maybe I'll just do the bottom half for now. Oh no, it has gone. Never can trust watercolour. So I've got so many wet areas, it's becoming hard to actually continue without drying it. So I might make up a green that's lighter. And again, hoping that one colour doesn't run into another. I'm going to leave a gap. Okay, and I'm going to continue working around just doing the segments. That's got to be filled in with glass. And we have another couple of leaves here and this one here. So this is one of the reasons I didn't put the background in first, is because some of these tiny little spikes might actually get lost in the background. And that way I can just adjust the background to make sure that they're still there, rather than committing to a really dark background too soon. Okay, so this is not a bad base colour for a holly leaf. They do tend to be a little bit deeper in colour, but it's okay for the lights. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for a minute. Okay, I feel the need for some more darks, so I'm going to go in here and see if I can't crisp up this edge here. And again, I need this to dry really dark. And again, I'm just playing with the reflections as well at the same time as doing these darks. So I find with a lot of the blacks that they become a quite deadened colour, or tone if you like, and I prefer them to be rich and juicy, so I will add to them, or I will glaze through them as well. So I do limit the amount of black that I use in total. However, this does require, because it's a black bottle, it does require some prominent blacks. Okay, so I do have a little reflection going on here, so I'll leave. So I'm going to soften that little bit in the middle, and I'm going to soften that there. So just a damp brush, not lots and lots of water. I'll actually soften this edge here as well. In fact, I think I want to go blue there. So I'm just adding some extra blues in. Again, this is making it juicy in colour. I'm just going to, again, soften, remove any really hard lines in that soft area, and the rest will have to dry. Okay, I think that one's all right. So I think it just requires me to darken the bottom of this, which I've got my grey for. So I'll leave a gap at the, in fact, I think I could do with a bit more blue in it. So I will just get a deeper version of that. I need more blue. Might actually tint that with, so we get really good coverage with the raw sienna. And I'm going to add some more blue. Oops, that's just sprinkled everywhere. Problem with painting is it's never an exact science. Greens out as well. I know that there's going to be darker greens on the leaf here, so I'll bleed some of those colours out as well, and maybe even bleed some more black back in so that we have something a little bit darker. I can lose the edge of the bottle, maybe not. Maybe I do want this to be a deeper violet here. Problem with watercolour is it is going to dry so much lighter, so I don't actually know what I'm going to get until it actually happens. So I'm going to come in the other side of this. So this hopefully should allow the candle to, or the flame to, stand out a bit. In fact, I might actually put a little bit of the gold through the top of the glass. So I've already got blue there, I'll go with the blue. And then down here I want some of this claret colour, or port colour, to become part of the background. I'll just push this back up into there, and then obviously I've got to put something in between here. So we can have a little bit of blue, some yellow, and I'll put some pink in and then let that dry, and then see if I need to redo the shadows on the glass. So I'm just going to go around and tighten up some of the edges. As you can see, I'm dropping some blues in with the purples as well, and again I will just soften the edge and then go back up and sort this out. So although I have to say I don't mind it actually. So I may have to change the position that this is laying in. It's obviously not level. it's migrating that way. Okay, so I'm just going to use a tiny little flat brush, and I'm going to lift as best I can the highlight for the embossed part of the glass. Okay, so needed a bit of a steady hand for that one. So now this is the back of the leaf. Now, if I remember rightly, they're just a paler viridian kind of colour. So I'm not going to go up to the edge and allow that to run in. So I'll leave that one alone for the minute and let that dry. Go on to the next one. So more sap green. Okay, little dabs of viridian. That might just have run far too far. And again, whatever highlights I want, I will lift. Okay, back with some more viridian. Now back with the sap. Okay, nearly got our first coat on for all of them. I think I'll just lighten the end of this. Touch of green gold on this end. And again, back to the viridian. And then I think we'll go back to the sap green, which I appear to be running out of. Okay, so I've got my first coat, so now I can leave them to dry. Okay, so I'm just going to vary some of these colours up. Seems to be a bit missing there, so I'm going to have to put that back in. So while everything else is dry, I'm going to do just a little bit more work on the glass. Now, I think I've actually gone into my green with my elbow. Okay, so just a few more highlights on the body of the glass and then the rim. I think there's one at the back there. Okay, let's leave that there for a minute. And go on and put some yellow highlights on the glass. I don't want raw sienna, don't I? Okay, so we're going to make the last push on the leaves. So I'm going in with, again, some sap green. I think I might actually need some extra yellow in there. I don't think it's light enough. Okay, so I've got some yellowy tinges going in there. And again, I'll go back to Viridian for the not so light areas. Again, I'm going to dry that off. But in the meantime, I can use just a little bit of white on those berries so they've got a little bit of highlight. I don't want too much though. I don't want the scene to be so deep in colour, or so bright I should say. So just a hint, and then we'll put the veins on the leaves. However, I do think that this space needs to be darker. The whole of that space needs to be darker. So I think I'll go with the Pyroline green from Winsor & Newton and the dioxazine violet from Winsor & Newton. So I'm going to wet the surface. Try and get up as close as I can to objects. And I'll do this section by section just to give me that extra control with the water. So take the water further than you want it. Back into the violet, which I've added a little bit of black to, so it's just a little bit deeper, as you can see as I drop that in. And I'll use a smaller brush to get up to the edges. Okay, smaller brush, and I'll use the violet just to get into those little spaces. So this little bit is dry. So I'll just get up to the edge. And then I can drop some water back in. And back to my green. And then I can continue wherever I want to go up to or not. So I've got the option to blur this out into the light. So I'm just going to again water that down. So the paint will continue to run through the water. I'll actually put a little bit of the pink, well, burgundy back in. And again, this is just water here. So I'm going to get the green a little bit deeper in this corner. This is fabulous green, this. Doesn't come off, but it's great. In fact, I do like a lot of the Pyroline colours. Drop some more purple in there, I think. Quite like what's happened here with the granulation, so I might leave the granulation. Let's go in with the purple. Then I'm going to just put water over there so that merges into that, and I can then keep the granulation. Now unfortunately that means it's got to dry yet again. As this is drying, I'm not too happy about this area. I think it needs to be a little bit darker, so I'm actually going to go in with a little bit more of the black. So let's try and get this up as close as I can to my object. In this case it's glass. And then I'll start to run it out. So I still see some of the purple showing through it. Then I can apply more purple, I think. I'll do that straight from the pan, so it's really deep, going into the burgundy. Okay, so let's try and straighten some of these edges. Seems to have bled there, but I can adjust that once it's all dry. Okay, so I'm going to use a pencil. So I don't want to draw far too much attention to these leaves. They're not really the focus of the painting. So just going to put some highlight around the edge of that. Now this is still damp, so the pencil's not working great. And the chances are I probably will not go back and do any more to the leaves. I just will tweak them a little bit at the ends to make the ends a little bit sharper. I probably need a yellow actually. Okay, so I'm using, this is an Inktense pencil, and this should just give me back some of the things that I've lost, like these points. So I can combine the pencils just with my paint and not lose any, or not too much detail. So again, I'm just going to darken some of these little areas down. I think I'll darken the whole side of that leaf. I can do this before I put a shadow of one onto the other. I think I'll darken that down.